This is only going to take 10 minutes, you hear me? So I want you to keep your trap shut and I want you to behave yourself.
Welcome to episode 28 of the Columbo podcast. It's only going to take an hour or so keep your trap shut and behave yourself.
You can't say that to the listeners, Gerry.
I'm not. I'm saying it to you.
Outrageous.
Are you feeling healthy? Are you feeling invigorated this evening, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some fresh Scottish summer rain in the air, and
only the other week you were boasting about the weather. You were indulging in the sunshine.
Yeah, it's turned on its head.
There's thunder out there earlier.
I heard that.
Wind and rain. Miserable. I'm soaked.
Yeah, but we're used to that. That is Scottish summer weather.
We are. Interesting episode this week, I thought.
Yeah, interesting's one word. I'm not sure it's one that's going to live long in the memory.
Perhaps not. There were a number of nice performances. I particularly liked the killer. But yeah, I would agree that perhaps the overall story wasn't as strong as others.
Yeah.
Before we begin this week's episode, any housekeeping?
Not really, just the usual iTunes reviews.
Yeah.
Star ratings.
Begging, pleading.
Please, we don't ask for much.
That'll do. I think we'll crack on. Why don't you give us the summary?
Playback is a familiar tale in many ways. With his professional career on the precipice, Harold Van Wyck murders his mother-in-law and uses technology to stage a convincing alibi. The evidence seems to suggest an intruder was responsible for the killing, but with Columbo on the case, it's not long before inconsistencies start to arise. With a video of the murder to help, Columbo sets about rewinding Van Wyck's scheme, but will he catch his suspect before the tape runs out?
Great summary as always, Ian. Very intricate and woven together well.
We're kind of stitched together.
Stitched, okay. We start off with a familiar opening scene of a Columbo episode. A large house, wealth.
Yes. Privilege. Arrogance.
Mm-hmm. We see a man in a trench coat, gloves and a hat, and he's breaking. It appears to be that he's breaking into this house.
It seems that way. We come to learn this man is Harold Van Wyck.
Yeah. So we quickly understand that it's not the standard break-in. We see him add scuff marks to the wall to make it appear as if someone had climbed in through the window.
That's it. He removes a pane of glass and he makes it look like someone's climbed through the window, but he doesn't enter the house that way. He just leaves.
No. There's a playful but foreboding score at this point.
Yeah, kind of ominous. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
It's good. The whole show, there's good music regularly.
Mm-hmm. We quickly understand that the man has left the scene, but we don't see how. That puzzled me.
Yeah.
How did he get back out unspotted?
Well, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming he's headed out to where he's parked his car because he drives in moments later. Or what we assume moments later, we're not told.
In a sports Merc.
Clearly a wealthy man.
Mm-hmm. And there's a guard at the gatehouse.
Yeah, Baxter.
Yes. He addresses him as a Mr. Van Wyck and informs him that his brother-in-law, Arthur, has arrived, and Van Wyck smiles at the thought of another family meeting.
Yeah, he speaks with a German accent, I thought, or European anyway, whether he's German or Dutch. It wasn't made clear, I don't think. He insults his mother-in-law here. I think we get the typical thing.
It's a 70s thing, isn't it? The old mother-in-law. I'm not sure if that was international, certainly in the UK in the 70s.
People made a career out of making fun of their mother-in-law.
Oh, many people did.
None of them were particularly funny.
No. So we enter the house and Van Wyck, he goes in. We notice a CCTV camera set up.
Yeah, it seems to be a high-tech arrangement going on here.
And the guard, Baxter, can apparently view the hall and the living area from his guardhouse.
Shed, yeah.
I think he can hear it as well. I think there's audio there.
It's not clear.
I'm not sure that ever caught on. The privacy, I don't think... If you live in that house, you want your guard to be... You might want to just walk about in your pants, your underdrawers.
But the sound doesn't make any difference to that.
No, but in general. Or you might want to be having a discussion in the hall with...
It's obviously some kind of experimental technology.
Yeah. We hear chatter, and he enters the living room, the living area, where we see a wheelchair-bound woman who we come to know as Elizabeth.
Yes, Mrs. Van Wyck.
And she is chatting with her mother, and they are talking with the brother-in-law, Arthur.
Yeah, with her brother, yes.
It becomes clear that the mother is not happy with Van Wyck as a businessman, but the wife seems very defensive of him.
Yeah, protective.
Throughout the episode, we understand, or we become aware, that she's clearly very much in love with the scoundrel.
That's it.
There's a great piece of comedy in this scene at the outset. Do you remember what it is?
No.
No?
Maybe it didn't appear like comedy, I don't know.
It should do. Van Wyck asks Margaret if she's done something with her hair, and she says no. And he said, I didn't think so.
Yes, I do remember that. That seems to be a continuation of the whole mother-in-law beating thing.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I thought it was quite smart, mind you. I enjoyed it. They don't like each other.
Clearly.
He speaks to Arthur, the brother-in-law, and we discover that Margaret is not happy with regards to the profits that are being made by the company. They are falling.
Yeah. Mr. Van Wyck's brother-in-law sticks up for him a little bit here. I mean, I think Van Wyck is involved and she's annoyed at him.
Yes.
But his brother-in-law sticks up and says that the whole market is taking a terrible beating.
Mm-hmm. But she's clearly the sort of matriarch of the family.
Yeah.
It's not just this one particular business, but they own a newspaper as well. There's a remark about that. So yeah, a well-off, powerful woman. Someone who's not to be crossed.
And it seems that someone has already attracted her ire.
Mm-hmm. After a few moments, Elizabeth, the wife, decides to retire for the evening. And Van Wyck is going to help her upstairs, but Margaret insists that he remain with her to discuss business.
That's it. And Elizabeth says just stay.
Yeah. Arthur also leaves, and as we mentioned sort of earlier, he stood up for Van Wyck, and we get the impression that he's quite timid and meek.
Passive.
You would have thought that being the brother in the family, that he would be or should be unhappy about an outsider coming in and running the family business. But his personality seems to be that he's happy enough just to take a secondary role.
Yeah, that's certainly what we're led to believe anyway.
When they're on their own, Margaret tells him firstly to close the door for privacy from the CCTV.
Yeah.
And he does so with a remote control. So as you mentioned earlier, this is a show of modern technology.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this in Columbo right the way back to the second episode.
Mm-hmm. She explains to Van Wyck what the situation is, and it's not good news for him.
No, not at all.
We have a clip.
I think I made it quite clear that Metis Electronics would have to show a profit or it would get another president. You do recall that, don't you?
Of course, madam.
Very well. I'm putting Arthur in your place, effective immediately. I'll accept your resignation the first thing in the morning.
Arthur? Arthur can't find his way to the commissary without a written order.
Arthur won't fritter away hundreds of thousands of dollars on idiotic systems and inventions. My assets are not unlimited, Harold. I don't intend to go bankrupt supporting your idle dreams.
Elizabeth knows about this?
No, not this time, Harold. Don't throw my daughter at me. It won't work. You see, I've retained a private detective to observe your activities these past few weeks. He's come up with some very interesting data on several women, notably one in Malibu and another in Beverly Hills. Your comings and goings are all very carefully documented. Need I go on?
You're incredibly evil, Margaret.
So he's been a bad boy.
A very bad boy, and this provides us with the motive for the murder in this week's episode.
Well, yes, obviously it's a murder that he had planned before this conversation, so he must have known it was coming.
Yes. Margaret was played by Martha Scott. She died in 2003, aged 90. She was Oscar nominated for Our Town in 1940. She is a star on the Walk of Fame, and she was in movies and TV shows such as Ben-Hur, The Bionic Woman, The Bob Newhart Show, and Dallas. So very established
Some big
actress.
shows there, yeah.
Arthur leaves the room after this confrontation with a sarcastic flourish. That's what I noted.
He's not impressed.
He's not impressed or concerned because
He knows what's going to
he
happen.
knows what he's planned anyway. From there we go to a control room.
Yeah, some kind of broom cupboard cum lab.
And inside this room, we see Van Wyck rig there's quite a lot of exposition here in terms of the tapes, what's written on the tapes and things, so we all know.
And he takes a long time to go through his process.
Yeah. So we see him rig a tape which is called Tape of Empty Hallway.
Yeah.
Don't know why you'd have to name that. And then we see him pocket a revolver as his wife travels down a stair lift into the hall area. And she asks if everything is okay and what's been happening.
Yeah. He takes her back upstairs.
Yeah, he tells her that far from having a fight with the mother-in-law, they've came to some sort of agreement. And as you rightly say, he leads her back up to the bedroom. So we're in the bedroom now. And Van Wyck tells Elizabeth that he has to attend an event at the gallery.
Yeah, we kind of move back and forth between Margaret in the study and the bedroom. So you see Margaret pouring another brandy.
It's mentioned a few times actually. I think she enjoys her brandy. I think Elizabeth, throughout the episode, hints at that.
Yeah. And Elizabeth's going to bed, but Harold's not even gone out yet. He's got an exhibition to attend, so I don't know what sort of time we're talking about here.
I'm thinking maybe 9:30, 9 o'clock.
So it's quite a late exhibition.
Oh, in fact, we do know what time it is, because we know what time the Murders Committee is.
Yes.
The Murders Committee at 9:30. Well, apparently.
It's not, though.
It's not. So this must be...
8:30-ish, 9:15.
Well, that happens straight after it. So yeah, it's about 9 o'clock.
Yeah, he leaves at 9:03, so...
9:13.
Is it 9:13? Okay,
Yeah.
There we go.
So yeah, it's just around 9 o'clock.
She wants to go with him, and he says, no.
No, you don't... Listen, this isn't for you. You get to your bed. There you go. Be a good girl. He gives her some sleeping tablets.
That's it.
Which she takes. He is quite charming with her.
Yeah, he comes across as caring. We've just learned that he's been cheating on her with a variety of women in a variety of states, so he's clearly not
No, he's not.
the dedicated husband he's trying to portray himself as here.
Yeah. Interestingly, we never find out. So they have one of the primary characters in this episode being wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
Now normally you would have some sort of backstory to explain that, the reason behind it.
We never find it.
We never find out. All I can think of is that they needed a plot device for all this gadgetry.
Well, I don't know. I think it's, the percentage of characters that you have in Columbo just by pure, odds. There's going to be a disabled one at some point. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's... Or a wheelchair-bound one. So there may be folk with other disabilities that aren't obvious.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, Harold comes back downstairs.
Yeah, he comes back downstairs. After leaving the room, he claps his hands, which is quite important.
Yeah.
To leave the bedroom, he claps his hands, and the sound makes the door open.
Yeah. It really seems a bit of a waste of energy.
It's one of these things, isn't it, that the technology's been there for... Even, the light clapping, you can turn your lights on and off by clapping your hand, and it's gimmicky.
Yeah, it's technology for technology's sake. It's not progress in any way.
Not at all. Over-engineered, I think.
You need to walk through the door anyway, so...
Yeah. So, he comes back down the stairs.
Mind you, I say that, sorry, I'll go back to that point. The woman in the wheelchair might find it easier to clap to open a door.
Yeah, but...
If she's on her own.
Sure, but you would simply, what they do nowadays is you have a switch.
Yes.
Just about every accessible building.
I'm just, I can see where there might be a use for it.
Sure.
Anyway, carry on.
Back into the control room.
His little cupboard.
Yep, his little cupboard. And we see, again, it splits between the control room and the lounge. So we see the mother-in-law, Margaret, she's drinking happily in the lounge, and Van Wyck returns to the control room. And he plays the empty hall video that the guard will view instead of live action. So he's basically running this old film, pre-recorded film of the empty hallway into the guard's hut screen. That's what he's viewing.
Yeah, it's not a continuous recording, we find out later. It only records when it's activated.
Yes.
So all he needs to have is enough recording to cover the time when he would have been walking through.
Yes. The camera goes to the hallway the whole area. And as Margaret gets up to leave the lounge, she hears a noise in the hall, and she spots that a plant has been knocked over.
Yeah, we hear the thump as it goes down, and she goes to investigate and is shot dead without any words being spoken.
Yeah, so she sees Van Wyck, turns around to run before he shoots her in the back.
That's it.
Dead.
Dead.
Elizabeth then calls in a sleep-induced haze. So she picks up the phone at her bedside and she calls downstairs to inquire about the noise.
Yeah.
And Van Wyck answers, and what does he tell her?
He says he didn't hear anything. He's still there. Her mother's listening to music and he's heading out now.
And she's happily listening to music and drinking her brandy in the lounge. But he's quite out of breath, actually. Did you catch that?
I didn't catch that, but basically he's in trouble now. The fact that she heard that has undone his plan completely.
The note I made was, plan already compromised.
Yep.
Didn't think it through very well, did he?
No, I mean, well, he thought it through insofar as he gave her the sleeping pills, but he didn't get it right.
Yeah, but even then, you can't shoot someone in a house when there's someone upstairs. Sleeping tablets aren't, you're not in a coma.
Yeah.
You're asleep.
That's it.
And, yeah, he would have to have used a silencer.
Yeah, and even then, the thump of her falling down might have woken Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So.
Poorly thought out.
Chancy.
So Van Wyck then rigs the CCTV to start playback of the actual events for a point later in the evening.
Yeah, he sets a wee electronic timer.
Yeah. Now this is what the guard will view. So he's going to view the actual murder, but just at a point in the future when Van Wyck is not on the scene.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching this, I hadn't realised it only came on when there was movement.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, well, he's obviously timed it so that when Baxter goes on a break, maybe he's not watching, it'll reset to being live.
Yeah.
Because obviously he has to cover a flicker. He can't just have it being empty and suddenly a dead body lying there.
Yeah.
But the way that it actually works changed it.
Yeah. So Van Wyck then leaves in his car, but he stops at the guardhouse.
Yes, to explicitly state the exact time to the minute.
Yep, he looks at his digital watch, his new thing, which he has designed, we learn. And he gives Baxter his contact number of the gallery.
Yeah.
And he remarks, as you say, that it's 9:13 p.m. and he's late.
Yeah.
Apparently he would do this all the time. He would leave his contact number for wherever he was going. Why would you do that? Why would you give the guard your contact number wherever you went?
Well, Columbo does it. I don't know. Maybe it's just force of habit. Maybe he likes to have an emergency contact or something.
Or again, as we discussed at the top of the podcast, this maybe a sort of plot contrivance, a bit of a weakness. It's, they've just like the him shooting someone with someone else in the house.
Yeah,
it's quite a heavy-handed clue here that's been forced into.
It's not the most subtle of episodes. It's not just the plot that's not subtle, because there's a lot of other things, and we'll talk about these in a minute. Even this moment and the immediate following moment, he arrives at the exhibition, and again he makes a point of saying the time out loud. And those two things remind me very much of Suitable for Framing.
Yes.
When the killer did the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, they're maybe rehashing a few things here.
They rehash about 3 or 4 things in this episode from different episodes.
We'll get to them as we get to them. So as you rightly say, we are now at the gallery.
Yeah, and there's a new girl.
Marcy.
Who is admired by Harold.
Yep, there's a bit of subtle flirting.
And we know that he's a man who is not shy when it comes to putting himself forward.
No, I would suggest that he is probably thinking that she will be next on his amorous hit list.
At least hoping.
Yeah. Again, as you said, he makes a point of noting the time. It's 9:28. Again,
far too specific. If he says something like it's almost past or something like that, then that would be much better.
Yeah. And he shows her this digital watch that he's got, and she seems quite impressed by the technology.
Yeah.
He's designed it. And then Francine, the host of the event, approaches and he confirms with her that Elizabeth is at home in her bed.
Yeah.
We're back to the guardhouse and the timer activates and the tape rolls to show the crime happen.
Yeah, and from Baxter's perspective, it's happening right now.
Yeah, the plant is knocked over and Margaret is shot, but the killer remains just out of sight in the shadows. Now, I never mention goofs in the podcast because it's not really relevant. I'm not really interested in goofs.
Yeah.
But I always notice this one. You see a slight puff of smoke from the top left-hand side of the camera. Obviously where the prop gun was used in making it. And you can notice that, and it always notice it.
I
Every
didn't
time.
notice it.
Yeah. Anyway, Baxter immediately, as you would expect, runs from his guardhouse up to the main house and discovers the body.
Yeah.
And then we see Van Wyck being called at the gallery,
Yeah, the call comes in.
where he's conveniently left his telephone number. This is why it's a complete contrivance. What he would have done, or what he should have done, if you insist on giving people the contact details, what you say is, look, I'm going to this gallery. Well, I can't remember the name of it, but I'm going to the gallery, that's where I'll be.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't go out your way necessarily to
Look up the
just
number.
look
for
up
them.
the number of that and write it down and give it to him. You know, if it's an emergency, he can find out the gallery, but he's, yeah. Anyhow, we're at the house now and it's the crime scene. Columbo arrives and he shows Baxter his ID.
Yeah, Columbo's got a cold, which reminds me of A Stitch in Crime.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second episode that we've borrowed something from so
Yeah.
far.
It's not just that, it's the borrowing, and this isn't a complaint, but it's not just about borrowing a specific attribute such as a cold, but he'll often have something, you know, a few times he's been really tired
Yeah,
or hungry.
yeah,
He's not had his dinner. So that's the type of little nuance that the character has. We see the body is being it's been wheeled out by the paramedics, who confirm that she was very dead when they got there.
yeah.
The cop, or a cop, shows Columbo the apparent point of entry.
Yep, they've identified this in the window.
Mm-hmm. And he then shows him the electronic doors and explains about the gadgets and the CCTV that are installed in the house and the fact that the guard saw the whole thing. This reminded me of the line in
Double exposure?
yes, with Robert Culp,
Yes.
where he
If only there was a video.
yes, showing the whole thing. So they open a door to reveal, and this is I thought it was quite a tragic. There's two scenes in this episode where Elizabeth is really quite sort of forlorn and tragic. This one is they're chatting, and in fact at this point Columbo's quite happy. He's talking about the electronics, and then suddenly the door opens, and we see the bereaved daughter of the victim sitting sort of head-bound, saddened in a wheelchair, and you think, oh, that's
You don't
not
see
nice.
a lot of genuine grief in Columbo, because quite often the supposedly grieving folk are the killers,
Yeah,
because it's their own wives or girlfriends or friends that they've killed.
sure.
So this is one of the... I mean, there's been a few, but this is one of the few times where you actually get to see.
Been very sort of close and very up close and personal.
Yeah.
So just on that, the wife Elizabeth was played by someone we've mentioned before,
Okay.
Gina Rowlands. She was born in 1930, and the reason that she has been mentioned before is that she, at the time, was and is now the widow of the late John Cassavetes.
Ah.
So she, in real life, was great friends with Peter Falk. She was nominated twice for Oscars, Gloria in 1980 and A Woman Under the Influence in 1974. Both were directed by Cassavetes, and in Woman Under the Influence she starred alongside Peter Falk himself, and also Fred Draper and John Finnegan.
Familiar names.
Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't wheelchair bound in real life?
No.
Okay.
She had 8 Golden Globe nominations and 2 wins, and 8 Emmy nominations and 2 wins.
Not a bad record.
Which, because of the friendship with Falk, I often think about the fact that Peter Falk would have to have had that same sort of conversation. He offers his condolences in the episode,
Yeah,
and he would have done that in real life as well, obviously, when Cassavetes died.
probably.
You'd assume. So there was a sort of life imitating art.
Yeah.
Back to the episode.
We've got Baxter mentioning that the crime occurred at 9:30. He saw it on the monitors.
Sure. Elizabeth says that she knows nothing. She wants to go to her room, and Columbo offers to help her up to her room, but she accepts.
Yeah, he's got some questions he wants to ask.
Mm-hmm. And she tells him that only her mother and her were in the house. Arthur and Van Wyck had previously left.
Yeah, we assume Arthur left at the point he left the room earlier on. We didn't actually see him go.
Yeah. And then she says something, it's, I think, perhaps maybe one of the first clues or suspicions. She asks why a supposed burglar had to kill her mother.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. I think Columbo agrees with that.
Probably. And he doesn't need much to get him going.
No. We're back into the hall area, and we have a trope here. Van Wyck is explaining to a cop his theory.
Yeah, well, we assume some time has maybe passed.
Hmm.
And Van Wyck is back from the gallery. And yeah, like, my notes say he has a theory, and then a sort of an unhappy face because what's he doing?
Yeah, it's the usual, isn't it? He's trying to tell the cops what they should be thinking.
Yeah, it's stupid. He's saying, "Oh, I've planned it all. This is what you meant to think."
Mm-hmm.
Columbo admires the digital watch, though.
Well, before that, Columbo's introduction to Van Wyck is they hear a sneeze, and Columbo is hiding behind a set of curtains. He appears from out of there, and as you say, yeah, he looks at his watch and he compliments him. But he also compliments him on his home and its functionality and beauty. And Van Wyck, I think, is pleased. He's got an ego here. He's pleased with that compliment.
Yeah, I think Columbo's relying on that to an extent. He likes to prick egos.
Yeah. So Van Wyck confirms that he left the house at 9:13.
Too specific.
Very specific, but he's got an excuse for that. He says he's exact because he has this digital watch, and when he looks at it, he tends to remember the printed version of the time.
Yeah. Also the fact he said it out loud to Baxter.
Yeah.
That was unnecessary at the time as well. Columbo's excited to learn that there's a video of the murder. Finally, he's been waiting all his life for this.
It's the type of thing, yes, it's going to be an early night, Columbo thinks.
Yeah.
But, before that, Van Wyck explains his theory about the killer to Columbo himself, about him standing in the shadows. Otherwise, he would have been recorded. And he also explains that the CCTV itself records on movement, sound, and heat.
Yeah.
So they go to the control room.
Yeah, they watch the playback. And Harold just continues his careering, doom-laden path towards confession, essentially.
Yeah.
He comes up with, I think when he knocked over the pedestal, he just froze.
Yeah. It's far too much, isn't it?
What's he doing?
He also tells him that the killer must have entered through the rear door to the study.
Columbo wants to examine the tape, so he gets to take that away.
Yeah. He's cursing his luck. He says 3 more feet and the killer would have been seen on CCTV. And he asks Van Wyck if he thinks that the killer knew about the camera. And Van Wyck doubts it and offers, again, as you say, he offers too much of an explanation as to what happened and why he didn't know about it. It's nonsense.
It's nonsense, and he keeps doing it for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. So Columbo requests the tape. He wants to take it down to the station, and Van Wyck obliges.
There's no option, really.
No. And he also, which is another flaw, he offers Columbo the use of his equipment if needed. He says, you can come back up here and use my studio if you need to. That's a little bit like inviting a vampire over the threshold.
Yeah.
So we go back to the guard's house, and he again confirms that he saw the murder take place at 9:30, and that Van Wyck left and gave him his contact number on a magazine. We have a clip of the discussion here.
Yeah, it's an interesting exchange.
Grant Gowers. Isn't that where you contacted Mr. Van Wyck?
Yeah, that's where he was. That's why I called him.
Does he usually leave word when he goes on?
Most of the time, yes.
Strange place to leave it. Do you have a log?
And on the wall behind you.
I noticed yesterday he went to his office at 3 o'clock and you entered it here. How come tonight you entered it here?
Well, I didn't write it, Lieutenant. You see, he did. He said he was in some kind of a hurry, so he handed me the magazine, said if I needed him, that's where he'd be.
So ordinarily he'd pull up in a car and tell you where he's going. And you would come in here and you'd record it on the log. But tonight he wrote it on the magazine in advance. I got this funny habit. You know, when a person does something one way and he suddenly does something another way, I immediately think, I'm sure it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, he's not sure it doesn't mean anything.
Not at all.
I think he's convinced it does mean something.
Yes, I think to be fair, Columbo already suspects and knows that Van Wyck is the killer.
I think, yeah, he's basically solved this case.
Mm-hmm.
Because Van Wyck was so stupid.
Just looking for proof now.
Yeah.
Baxter was played by Herbert Jefferson Jr. He was born in 1946, and he has starred in a number of TV shows, including Battlestar Galactica, Airwolf, The Dukes of Hazzard, The Devlin Connection, McCloud, Mission Impossible, and, one for you, Ian, Star Trek of Gods and Men, and Star Trek Renegades.
I think those again are fan-made Star Treks, so they're not really...
Not canon.
Well, I don't want to get into a conversation
Come
about
on.
what is and isn't canon.
Is it canon?
We'll get emails. So, my understanding is this is fan-made films.
Okay, but there's still that tenuous Star Trek connection then.
It's got Star Trek written on it, yeah.
We won't go down this rabbit hole, but how can you have... Surely, I mean, these things are on IMDb, so it's not just someone with a camcorder, it's a proper film, yeah. How can they use the Star Trek brand if it's not officially sanctioned? You can't just go calling something Star Trek. Surely Star Trek, whoever own the rights, aren't going to allow you to just make up stuff.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
I genuinely don't know. Yeah, like you say, I don't understand why that would be permitted, but I presume there's some kind of accord because they've been doing it for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. That's what leads me to believe that it's not just the sort of fan fiction as you like to deride it as. There must be an official...
I'm not deriding it. I'm just observing that it's not made by Paramount. It's not...
But it must have their blessing.
I don't know. It's probably one that's easily solved by Googling.
I'm not going to do that. But if anyone... And we know who we're talking about here. Largo. If you want to...
clarify the position.
Go for it.
Sure. In the comments. Don't upvote it yourself, though.
We return to the house.
Columbo is asking if anything was taken, and Harold says, nah.
It's almost a one more thing. He sort of left and then came back.
Yeah. Harold's got another theory. Believe it or not.
Yes. Okay, so just to clarify here, he says this is meant to be a burglary. Anything taken? Van Wyck says no. And what's his theory?
I can't remember. I didn't write it down. It was so frustrating that he had another theory that I just blanked out.
He said he must have panicked. So he shot the woman and panicked. And
that's why it wasn't even worth writing down.
Yeah. Then there is an actual one more thing.
Yeah, they're talking about the coverage of the camera. Why is it only covering that one area? But there's a good answer for this one.
A perfectly acceptable answer, which is...
It's covering the safe.
Yep. They're not a bank. They're just there to keep an eye on who might break in. And,
yeah, it's not designed to catch a murderer or stop a murderer. It's an anti-theft system.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally it points where their assets are.
That was fine. We come back to the house the next morning and Columbo arrives with a dog in the car. We heard this at the top of the show.
Yeah, the intro clip, yeah. Dog barks at Harold.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's a good versus evil sensing dog.
Dogs can sense it, apparently.
Yeah.
Van Wyck finds Columbo around the back of the house inspecting the window area.
We've seen this before.
Yes.
Lady in Waiting, season 1.
Mm-hmm. This is quite sloppy. It's a fairly elementary clue, I'd have thought.
Yeah.
He notes the mulch in the soil. What's mulch?
It's kind of like composty stuff that they use to keep the flowers growing nicely.
Mm-hmm. And there are no footprints
inside the house.
Yeah. And this stuff is dirty. It's quite moist, isn't it?
Believe it or not, Harold has a theory.
Really? Okay, the problem is that they're not deep down enough to show someone jumping out of the window.
Yeah.
And what's Harold's theory here?
I'm not even sure what his first theory is. I've got his next theory.
Well, the one I've got here is that he says that maybe he lowered himself down.
Yeah. So his first theory is when they were leaving, they lowered themselves down. And Columbo says that's not possible because there's no mulch inside. But Harold's got a theory.
Oh, this is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, he says maybe they took their shoes off. And Columbo acts like he's impressed, but essentially I think he's writing in his book, Killer, over here, with big arrow.
Yeah. Yeah, my issue here is this. So, we saw Van Wyck fake the scuff marks on the wall, so he was clearly in the mud, the mulch.
Yep.
He then leaves in his car.
Yep.
Does he change his shoes? He can't
Well,
clean.
no, he's run across a lawn, so I assume his shoes are wiped clean by the grass.
Chancy and risky that he's not going to leave.
Or maybe he's going to... Maybe we don't see him get into the car, so maybe he does change his shoes or knock the dirt
we'll
off
have to
his
accept
shoes.
that because otherwise he is covered in the dirt himself.
And be in the wrong place, the footprints.
Yes. Not only, getting back to what you said, not only was Columbo pretending to be impressed. I think he pretended to be embarrassed that he hadn't thought of such a obvious explanation.
Yeah, well, what robber wouldn't take their shoes off?
Yeah, it's just politeness, isn't it?
Yes.
You don't rob someone's house and trample dirt everywhere.
Yeah, and shoot their mother-in-law.
No.
Harold's talking next to Columbo about the event. Again, he gives the very specific time that he
9:42. He arrived.
Too specific. What's he doing? I mean, I don't know if is this a play on, ruthless German efficiency or something? I didn't get it. If it was, it didn't come across that way.
I think he's just a little bit what you maybe would call OCD these days. He's very precise.
I think he's just been too clever for his own good here.
Okay.
He leaves anyway, and Columbo finds Dog with Elizabeth.
Yes, around the front of the house. She tells Columbo about waking up from her dream and thinking that she heard something.
Yeah, this is the critical breakthrough for Columbo now. This is the case solved.
Yes, because he doesn't realise at the moment, but this is the case-solving information. She said that when she woke up, she noticed her gown on the bottom of the bed and a clown doll in the corner which she could see.
Yeah, but also the fact that she even heard the sound at all, that can place the killing at a time when Harold was present.
Yes. And they go up to the bedroom to look around, so Columbo understands the positioning of everything. I still can't get my head around the fact that someone would kill someone kill someone's mother while she's upstairs with a sleeping tablet.
Yeah.
It's weak.
It's a terrible plan, but I don't think we're meant to believe the guy's a criminal mastermind.
But you're meant to believe that he's smart. I mean, he's meant to be a bit of an electronics genius.
But there's a difference between being intelligent and having common sense and knowing how things will be perceived.
Of course, but I don't even think he's not meant to be just solely some sort of technical genius. He is meant to be quite a man of the world. He's goes to these galleries. He hides affairs, so he's not a complete idiot.
Maybe.
But anyway, we go back to the gallery and Francine, the owner, she smells Columbo's cigar and asks Marcy if she has been smoking something awful. I take it she means cannabis.
Possibly.
That's what I took it as.
I thought maybe she was talking about the cigar being terrible. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but she asks if she's been smoking something awful.
Okay.
She discusses art with
Columbo. I quite enjoyed this conversation. I thought this was nice.
So he doesn't understand this modern art or these sculptures, and
Well, I remember when I was young, you don't hear it so much anymore, but in the 90s, particularly, you had a lot of conversations about what is art, what counts as being art.
Tracy Emin and all this, Banksy.
Yeah, and I assume this is just the 70s version of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I presume it's a conversation that will come back round. It's probably cyclical.
Without a doubt.
Does this count as art? No, it's nonsense. No, thousands of dollars.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that in real life, I'm not sure if you know, but Peter Falk was quite a well-known artist. He was a painter.
Right. There you go.
So he does know art himself.
Any of his art ever featured on Columbo?
Don't think so.
Well, I'll take that as gospel, given you're the world's expert.
No, I may be wrong.
Maybe one of our listeners could inform
No, we don't really want to look too far ahead.
Well, this is a yes or no.
Oh, okay. Maybe they have.
Don't tell us which episode. Columbo's, as always, intrigued by the value of things.
Yes. To be fair on this, we looked at it and the prices were not outrageous. So one of them was $1,200. Now, as we know, that's less than... Well, it's about a tenth of a...
policeman's
salary. So these days, let's do the math.
It's about $4 or $5 grand, maybe.
Yeah, which is not a crazy amount for a piece of art, you'd have thought.
That's not top-level art.
No, of course not.
Good professional, but not world-renowned.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's local artists.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much right.
Yeah, but normally what happens is Columbo these things are generally extraordinarily expensive, but that's not.
No, not really. No. I liked his reference to his wife here was priceless.
Which was
that she's an artist. She does landscapes. She doesn't need to see any landscapes. She's got these ones where there's numbers in the squares and you fill them in with different colours.
But anyway, the point of this scene is that Marcy confirms that Van Wyck arrived at 9:28 because she knows that because of the watch.
Yep,
and that
stayed till the phone call.
Yeah, and it was definitely him. And that he brought his invite, and she also knew his face, aware of who he was. Marcy was played by Trisha Noble. She was born in 1944 in England. She was an actor, a comedian, a singer and a dancer. Her first appearance was on the Benny Hill Show. She was also in Z-Cars, The Rockford Files, Buck Rogers, Star Wars Episode 3.
That's a more recent one.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Columbo, and she was also in Carry On Camping.
We're not going to talk about Mrs. Columbo.
Are we not?
We'll get in trouble again.
Oh, not canon.
We'll skip on. Pretend you never said that. That series did not exist, is what we're trying to say.
What do you mean? The next podcast we're going to do, once we finish all this, we're doing all the Mrs. Columbo episodes.
I think that's a solo show for you, Jen.
From the gallery, we go back to the home, the Van Wyck home. And it's a sort of home office area.
Yeah, Elizabeth is asking to be chairman of the company, essentially.
Yeah, I think she's even being firmer than that. She's not used to, I don't think, taking a stance against Harold.
Yeah,
but
I mean, he is the chairman, so it's his job she wants, rather than her mother's. Or is it chairman of the group she's talking about?
Yes.
So you think it's more the overarching her mother's role?
I think, it doesn't really make that much difference. She is going to be, well, she says, he says, I'm not going to be your boss.
Yeah.
And
he doesn't want her to be his boss.
Yeah.
He's not going to. He can't work in that. It's not his 1970s brain can't handle working on for his wife.
Yeah.
He insists that she gives him proxy, and then, not content with borrowing from other Columbo episodes, this episode borrows from itself when he tells her that he knows she won't disappoint him, which is something that Margaret said to him right at the start of the episode.
Yeah. And this also has got a feel about Lady in Waiting.
Yeah, we've got a few throwbacks to that one.
Mm-hmm. The doorbell goes.
Columbo's here to do some practical experimentation.
Van Wyck opens it with a clap, the door.
Yeah, that's getting tedious.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, Columbo's there, as you say, with another cop who has a box of sand, and they're going to do some...
they're going to test whether a gun would open the bedroom door.
Yeah.
So Columbo obviously has his theory of what happened here.
Yeah, before we get into that, I think this was there's a couple of cops in this, but I think this was a cop who is known as Officer Banks. I may be mistaken, but there was certainly in this episode an Officer Banks, who was played by Stephen Marlowe. He was born in 1927. He was in Land of the Giants, Mission Impossible, Combat, Emergency, and the original Star Trek.
Hey.
So we've got one there.
That's it, another connection.
So this experiment, Columbo sends or asks Mrs. Van Wyck, Elizabeth, to go up to her bedroom where she was when the murder happened.
Yeah.
And Columbo asks the uniformed cop to stand on the stairs in the hall.
Basically midway between the two places.
Mm-hmm. As Columbo fires a gun into the sand.
Yeah, we know from last week's episode that Columbo's not the most confident with guns, but unlike last week, he does fire the shot himself.
Piece of trivia: the only Columbo episode where Columbo fires a gun.
There you go.
The only time.
I mean, he does talk about being unhappy about it, so it's not like they've just forgotten.
Sure. So Elizabeth confirms after the gun has been fired that she heard the shot quite faintly, but that her bedroom door opened.
Yeah.
And because of this experiment, Van Wyck is getting very agitated.
That's the exact note I took. Harold gets agitated.
He wants to know what Columbo is doing. And Columbo explains he has a problem with the time of the shots and what Elizabeth heard. We have a clip of this
Quite an
confrontation.
important moment, yeah.
Well, you know that the other night, the night of the murder, your wife heard something, and she didn't know what it was, so she called her mother, who didn't answer. So then she buzzed the study and she spoke to you.
That's exactly true. It was just before I went to the art show.
And that was around 9:13.
Yes.
That's a very big problem, sir.
You have to help me, Lieutenant. I fail to see where the problem is.
But Mr. Baxter, your security guard, he said that the shooting occurred around 9:30, give or take a moment.
What?
But if the noise that your wife heard was a gunshot, that means the shooting took place before 9:13.
How can my wife say it was a gunshot? What are you talking about, Lieutenant? If it would have been a gunshot, I would know myself. I was here. And I assure you, I heard nothing. And as a matter of fact, she's not sure if she heard anything either. She thought maybe she was dreaming.
Oh, she wasn't dreaming, sir. That's for certain.
Yeah. Columbo was able to demonstrate that the door must have opened.
Yeah. Well, that's why he can be sure that she wasn't dreaming. And how does he demonstrate this? What's his...
He shows that if the door was shut, she couldn't possibly have seen the clown doll sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
It would be too dark.
So they've went up to the bedroom by this point so that Columbo can highlight this.
Yeah.
And Columbo lies in the bed with his shoes on.
Yeah. Classy gent. Get kicked out of Slumberland for that, wouldn't he? But Harold's got a theory.
Yeah, he has. What is his theory?
That the door could be malfunctioning.
There's two things about this particular piece of evidence. First one being what you've said there. Yeah, that is technology doesn't always work.
True.
I'm happy enough with that explanation.
Really?
Yeah.
It just happened to not work at the moment a gun was
But
fired.
he's able to get her, which is the smart thing to do. He's able to remind her of a time when it had happened before.
Yeah.
So it's not. There's a bit of corroboration here.
It's not coming across as calm or composed in any way.
No.
He is fraying at the edge. Not as bad as in Requiem, when the guy started reciting poetry.
Yeah.
But he's coming a little bit
Definitely.
undone here, and he knows, I think, at this point he's under suspicion, and he is not handling it.
No. The other issue I have is that I'm assuming that clown is always there. It's a childhood
Yeah, she would
toy.
recognise even the outline of it.
Yeah, or even if she was dreaming, she could have dreamt that was there.
Yeah, I've just been aware of it generally, knowing
Yeah.
that's how it always looks.
A false memory or whatever.
Yeah, so,
you know
yeah,
that
I thought that at the time. It's not the strongest.
it's not.
No, I agree.
But again, this isn't something that you're going to rely on in court. It's just to help Columbo firm up his opinion.
Yeah, and he's pushing buttons in the killer's mind as well.
Now, Van Wyck understands Columbo's reasoning and logic and what he's thinking here, and he insists upon repeating his statement. He was still in the house but heard nothing. Now, Columbo states that there must have been a noise, or else the door would not have opened. And that's when, as you say, he talks about the malfunction. From there, we go to a cafe
It's an
bar.
odd scene.
Yeah. So
Columbo's sitting eating a burger.
he is eating a burger,
There's no chili.
watching some football, American football.
He is.
Was it a real game? Did you recognise the colours, or was it?
Well, it looked like a real game. I don't know what level it was at or who was playing.
And he sees an incident on the screen.
Okay, so I'll go into it, but there's a special teams play here. It's a punting situation. The team that had the ball hasn't gained enough yards for a new first down, so they're kicking it back to the other team. When that happens, the other team gets the ball unless they touch it and lose it and the other team gets it. So in this particular example, there's some dispute as to whether the guy who tried to catch the ball made any contact with it at all. And so both teams think they should have the ball. So there's a replay, and that gives Columbo a clue.
Okay, I think I'll edit that out, Ian. But what happens is we don't learn immediately, but there is some sort of epiphany here. From this, there's a replay.
Yeah.
And a close up. So we move on, and we go to now what was it? Is it the Midas office?
She calls it Midas. It's spelt Midas.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
Yeah.
But we see the brother-in-law Arthur, and he's with Columbo and a colleague.
See, this is a strange one. So Columbo's pulled Arthur in without knowing exactly what he's looking for or what he's going to show him.
Yeah, it's one of these ones, you see it fairly often in movies where they say, I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but I'll keep looking, I'll keep watching it, I'll keep rewinding it and watching it again, and I'll find something. And fortunately, he appears that he does. So he sets up two monitors. One shows the arrival of Baxter at the scene, and the other shows the murder as it happens. And the screens are frozen, and we see Columbo trying to pick out some
Differences or like a shadow from the sun or whatever else.
He sees something, but he's not sure himself what it is. Now, Arthur was played by Robert Brown. He was born in 1926. He was in TV shows such as Primus, Bewitched, Here Come the Brides, Bonanza, and Star Trek. So we're off back to the Van Wyck house.
Yeah, Harold's telling Elizabeth how much they need each other, and she's all sad and happy that he's not dead, but that her mother's dead, but he went to the gallery, so he's not dead. And Columbo shows up.
Yeah, with a cop. This actually might be the cop I was referring to before. I can't remember.
Who knows?
And Van Wyck sarcastically says perhaps he should move in with them. there that often.
Yeah. Well, he did invite him if he wanted to use the equipment.
Yes.
And he does.
He's got a problem. It's a technical question.
Yeah.
And Van Wyck says that he will, on this last occasion...
Well, this is it. If Van Wyck had watched any of the previous episodes, he would know that when Columbo says, "I promise it will not happen again," that he's got what he thinks he needs.
Yeah.
The obvious example would be Etude in Black, when he said, "This is the last time I'm going to bother you."
Mm-hmm. So we're in the control room, and Columbo asks for both tapes to be played. And he asks for confirmation that it's possible to play tapes that could be shown in the guard room.
Yeah, and Harold, to his credit, doesn't dispute that it's possible, and Columbo says, "Yeah, I already knew that."
Yeah.
So just checking.
Then we have, very quickly, the gotcha. So they zoom in on...
Yeah, it just kind of, we go suddenly to a final moment, don't we? Columbo puts his theory to Harold at first, and then we see the shot.
So what is it that does for Harold?
Well, it's something very elementary.
Mm-hmm.
He's left his invitation to the gallery lying in full view of the camera in the initial shot of the killing.
Yes. And what does that mean? Why is that important?
It means the killing happened before he left, because the gallery has it now.
Yeah.
Or Columbo has it now, but the gallery had it.
Yep, it's been confirmed by Francine and Marcy that when he arrived, he had his invitation.
Yeah. I have to be honest and say I'm very surprised that the cameras had high enough resolution to pick that out.
Yes. I would agree. Even
today's CCTV, you can't even make out a person's face.
Yeah.
You know, it's always kind of like a sort of half image.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recognise this man? Well, no, it's a face with squares in the middle of it. So the fact that Columbo could pick out a letter, A5 sized, like letter writing sized bit of paper on a camera from that distance, it strikes me as unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, but I will forgive them because I do quite like the gotcha. The principle behind it is nice.
I would have liked it better if it'd been like a moving shadow, like he was talking about in the first place. Maybe that would be too obvious.
Sure. Van Wyck tries to defend himself at first, and he goes at a...
It's brilliant, he comes up with a new theory.
He does, he goes a little manic. We've got a clip of it here.
Harold, that's your invitation to the art gallery.
That's what it is. You can even see your name written on it. It's your invitation. I went back and got this from the Grand Galleries. This is this. This is what you presented at the art show the night of the murder. The problem is it was on the desk immediately after the shooting. How did it get to the art gallery? By your own testimony, you took it there. But in order to get it off the desk, you practically had to step over the body. That woman was shot before you left the house, and you shot her.
This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Elizabeth, tell the lieutenant. Before I left the house, I saw your mother coming up to the room to wish you good night. Tell him. I saw her alive before I left. Tell him, Elizabeth!
Elizabeth breaks down in tears. Columbo puts the tapes off, and Harold is taken away.
Yeah. Almost. I would say that Elizabeth, Gina Rowland's performance here is a little bit more subtle than breaking down in tears, which would be the obvious, I think, reaction.
Certainly the note that I took. Well, no, the note I took is Elizabeth cries.
Yes, and I think that's more accurate, and it's more of a trickle. It's a really understated performance, but I think that
she's basically been betrayed by her person that she trusted and loved.
She feels betrayed, distraught, and she's not got to the stage where she is lashing out. It's just that one sort of solitary single tear that trickles down her cheek.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really nice performance and a really nice, quite a powerful way to end, and quite an emotional scene to end on. Normally often there's a little bit of humour involved.
Well, we saw last week the crazy end scene after the gotcha.
Yes, but this was far more dark.
Yeah.
But I liked it.
It reminded me of Double Shock, where Columbo comforts Mrs. Peck after the two boys that she raised are taken off as murderers.
Yeah. A little bit more solemn.
Yeah.
Yeah. a fantastic performance, I thought, by, we've not mentioned him yet, by Oscar Werner, who played Harold Van Wyck.
Yeah.
He was, you mentioned earlier about his nationality. It wasn't discussed really, it wasn't given. But in real life, he was an Austrian who died in 1984, aged 61, from a heart attack, but by all accounts, he had a fairly significant alcohol problem as well.
Right.
He was Oscar nominated in 1965 for Ship of Fools, which also starred Jose Ferrer, who played the killer in Mind Over Mayhem.
Mind Over Mayhem with the robot.
And also as an actor, Alf Kellen.
Schellin.
Yes.
Schellin.
Schellin.
Yep.
Who is a multiple director in Columbo.
Interesting point about Alf Schellin that I didn't mention any of the times he was directing Columbo. It's not that interesting, actually. He's from Lund in the south of Sweden, where I studied at university.
You did mention that.
Did I mention it on tape?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
They can cut this time.
He was a renowned and fantastic stage actor. That was his background. He had 2 Golden Globe wins and nomination for numerous Golden Globes and BAFTAs. This was his second last screen role, and then he spent his remaining time travelling and performing poetry and works of pacifism.
How do you perform works of pacifism?
Don't know.
You just go to places and don't do things?
I think you talk about it. And again, you need to remember this was an Austrian who died in 84, aged 61. So his sort of history of living and born in Germany at the time, in Austria.
Well, it'll be Austria and Germany were one country for part of that time as well.
So he'd obviously had a very disturbed background.
Quite possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, I wasn't as blown away by the killer as you were. I know you thought he was charismatic. I thought the opposite. I thought he wasn't charismatic. But it's always good when you get a difference of opinions on these things.
Well, I think, charisma is not something that is black and white.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
It certainly is.
It's a very subjective thing.
Very. I just liked his delivery. I liked the way he spoke. I like, Arthur and the way I just like his, I thought his performance was nice. I thought he played very well the type of killer who was emotional but fragile and almost on the brink. And I think, we saw that towards the end where there was almost a sort of nervous breakdown.
Yeah. For me, it was a bit much. It was like he was over-egging the pudding at points with his eccentricities. But yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. I can understand why folk might like that.
Yeah.
Episode summary, shall we? Or review? Maybe a better word. I've already got a summary at the start.
Okay, do you want to do that before sort of trivia and production information?
Oh, that's a tough decision.
Your call.
Let's do the trivia first and then we'll come back.
Okay. Trivia and production information. There's not much here. This was apparently one of Peter Falk's favourite episodes.
Surprising. Maybe the technology.
Maybe the technology, and maybe I think he enjoyed playing alongside his good friend, Gina Rowlands, and Oscar Werner.
Could be.
And I've mentioned before, this was the only episode where Columbo fired a gun.
Yeah.
Production info. 2nd of March 1975 at the 73-minute length. So shorter, certainly felt shorter.
Well, certainly when we've come off 4 long episodes, it did.
Mm-hmm. Bernard Kowalski was the director. We've met him before. This was his 3rd of 4 Columbo episodes, the first being Death Lends a Hand.
Well, which was also a technology-heavy episode.
Mm-hmm. Yes. David P. Lewis and Booker Bradshaw were given the writing credits on this. Now, Booker Bradshaw, he died in 2003, aged 62. As an actor, he was in the Mod Squad, the FBI, Coffee. He had a voice role in Alvin and the Chipmunks, and he was in 2 episodes of Star Trek, the original series.
There you go.
Where he played a Dr. Mbenga. As a writer, he wrote the Mr. T cartoon, Different Strokes, some episodes of the Rockford Files, and he was a writer on the Richard Pryor Show.
Well, that takes some skill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do the episode review.
Okay. Motovine, what did you think?
That was quite an obvious motive. He was threatened by the victim and knew it was coming, so he'd prepared a trap, so to speak. Yeah,
it was to prevent him from being fired and losing control of the company and his income.
Well, I don't know if financially be any worse off, given that his wife was the daughter and therefore presumably had access to the wealth.
Yeah, but he would not necessarily have been allowed to...
He wouldn't be able to play his games with technology. He wouldn't be able to invent things the way he had the chance to.
Yeah, because without killing Margaret, he could not have used the money as he saw fit. She
I think it's
would be
more the
controlling
control
that.
of the money, yeah.
Of course. The clues. I'm going to run through what I've got, and you can tell me any ones I have missed.
Okay.
So the first one was, why did the burglar kill the mother-in-law?
Yeah.
There's a suspicion. The lack of soil in the house.
Mulch.
The mulch. The clown and the door clue.
Yeah.
The change of habits. So we found out from
Yep.
Baxter why he...
Yep.
The constant sort of references to the time, which is too obvious.
Yeah, you've also got the wife hearing the sound.
Yes, I've got that here, yep. Hearing the noise itself. Any others that I've missed?
I suppose you could say his increasingly erratic behaviour, his theories for everything.
Yeah.
I think that was a bit of a giveaway.
Sure. And then we come to the gotcha.
Yeah, that was fairly...
The invitation.
I mean, we criticised the believability of the resolution and so on, but if we suspend disbelief long enough to accept that, then it's a pretty clear-cut gotcha.
Yeah, so pretty much cut and dried.
Yeah, I don't think he's got any way out of this.
No. So, all in all, Ian, not a dreadful episode.
Well, like I say, there was nothing terrible about it. It wasn't an episode that I hated. It just, I don't think it's one that I will, 2 or 3 years from now remember as a great episode.
Yeah.
I think it was a top class one.
I think it ranks alongside the sort of short fuse episodes. It's decent. Some, there's nice bits to it, but not one that you would. I don't think it's the type that your average Columbo fan returns to.
Personally, I'm going to put it with Mind Over Mayhem in that bracket.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Next week we have A Deadly State of Mind.
That sounds like it might be a dramatic one.
Could be.
Perhaps with some kind of mind control.
Have you been looking ahead?
No.
Good. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, just thanks to everybody. Continue to be blown away by the great level of conversation in the wee community going on there at Columbopodcast.com. Anyone who feels intimidated by that, don't. Just jump in, leave your thoughts, and people will be more than happy to discuss the episode with you.
They will. Okay, that's us for this week, Ian. We'll see you all next week.
Cheerio.
You have been listening to the Columbo Podcast from Heard Yet Media.